Welcome back to the Telco AI Forum. In this next session, we're going to talk with Telus to understand how they are using AI across their operation. And to do that, we're joined by Mr. Hesham Fahmy, the Chief Information Officer. So thank you so much for joining the forum today.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me here today.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of ground we're going to try to cover. So let's jump right in. Maybe you can just give us the high level setup of Telus's general approach to AI and how you've been using it to date.
Yeah, so I mean, AI has been around for decades, and if I think Telus, like our journey has been probably started in 2015, where we were leaning heavily into AI. Back then, it was a lot around the supervised AI, predictive AI, and models, and we use it a lot for predicting customer behavior, customer experience, improving it, improving our network. And then the generative AI came on the scene about 3 years ago. And in the early days, I think a lot of people got scared with it and said, block it at the firewall. And we took the different approach. We kind of saw the writing on the wall, and we said that this is probably going to be really transformational. And so we leaned into it very heavily. And so we took the approach of actually adopt it, created our own kind of walled garden, so made it safe for all our employees to play with it. And we just said, hey, if we got people really comfortable and familiar with it, no different than email and spreadsheets, then sort of magic can happen. And so that's kind of what we've done. And what we've seen through that is really the adoption and literacy has gone across the whole enterprise. We have close to 60,000 plus employees all actively engaging it and really building into their own workflows. And the reason they can do that is they've got this really trusted, safe interface to use it, and so there's no fear about any risks of the AI, and so then they're able to build in their workflows, and so it's been great for us. So it's really about empowerment and adoption.
Excellent. And you mentioned the rise of commercial grade generative AI and the role that that might have to play in driving customer experience. Tell us a little bit about your customer support use case. And I guess I'm interested here because this seems like a great starting point for a lot of operators as they go down this AI journey, because it's a fairly well-defined use case and it has straight lines to both OpEx reduction and kind of monetization opportunities as you improve your customer care. But just give us an overview of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm giving you two views on it, because probably the one you're thinking about is our external facing, right? That's public and available to everyone. But I also want to shed light on what's happening behind the scenes, because I think that's even more powerful from a customer experience. But the one you're talking about is our publicly available customer support tool. We're coming up at almost, I think, a year anniversary of it being live. And one of the things we're really proud to is it's one of the first to be globally certified as privacy by design, because we kind of built the responsible AI from ground up in it to make sure that it was trusted, it's a trusted source, and can really be that assistant for our customers. And what we're seeing with it is it's answering over 400,000 different queries from customers. It's really helped divert a lot of calls to our call center. It's really empowered our customers. And I think one of the things you worry about is you can look at those metrics about call containment and call diversion, but are you doing that at the expense of customer experience? And is it really people are getting frustrated and they're not getting an answer? And we're actually seeing the opposite. We're seeing actually customers are finding that they can get the answers they want at their own time, at their own convenience, and it's really quality answers. And so it's been a great enabler for us. We started on one of our flanker brands, and now we're expanding across all our TELUS properties, and it's been great. But the one I want to tell you more about is, what about the actual our agents themselves who are servicing customers? Because that's part of the customer experience. And what I want to share here is there's quite a lot of enablement tools we've created. So we have an internal assistant for our call center agents, and it helps them get to the customer answers much faster as well. So those have been processing over 700,000 queries to date, saving around 80,000 training hours that we have for our agents. And if you think about a call center employee, that's a very stressful job. You've got an angry customer, you want to try to get the answer as fast as possible. Well, now they have this assistant with them that can help them get to the answer, get them a high quality answer, and actually give them a good script of how they can reply that back. And so it's been a real good safety net, but it's also elevated the level of service and quality that we've been giving to our customers who call in. And one of the other tools they have too is it's an agent trainer. So one of the other things is how do you get an agent to know every single product, every single kind of question? And rather than learn it on the job, we're using AI assistants to simulate calls and simulate and create that training environment for our call center agents. And that again has been a huge, productivity booster, but a huge, boost to then the quality of service that our agents are providing. And so these are kind of behind the scenes that are very human centric uses of AI that have also led to that, great, customer outcomes for us.
Yeah, I think there's a theme developing here around the cultural aspect of embracing AI, and we'll maybe circle back to that as we get towards the end of our time together. I did want to know a little bit more about how you're employing artificial intelligence for energy optimization across the network and the data center estate. This has also been a really focal use case and for good reason, right? It helps drive sustainability goals and it touches on OpEx again. So maybe just tell us a little bit about the energy optimization system that you developed with the Vector Institute.
Yeah, that was a really fun project that we did. And one of the things we love about it too is we've actually open sourced the code and we've kind of shared that as a contribution because we'd love everybody to apply that. It goes to our values of like how do we promote sustainability. And for those of you who don't know, Vector Institute is one of the premier, AI research institutes globally. We have a long-standing partnership with them. And the problem we were looking to solve is if you look at most data centers, 40% of your energy consumption is in the cooling systems and cooling the equipment that sits in your data centers. And as a telco, that's a lot of telco infrastructure that has to be cooled. And so it has, great economic impacts onto our bottom line, but also sustainable impacts. Like how can you, optimize that? And standard HVAC cooling, I mean, they just use standard control feedback loops. It gets too hot, turn the cooling on, and vice versa. But there's no real intelligence in there. And so what we worked with the Vector Institute is how do we, this is now supervised AI, so not the generative AI sense, but now how do we look at, many different data points and features. You're looking at weather feeds, the equipment, your load, your predicted load that might come on that equipment, us understanding the workloads that it runs. And how can you start getting a more efficient way of when do you start the cooling, and how do you optimize how much of the energy you put towards cooling? And the results have been great. So, the first few versions of that algorithm we put together in the model, it's already achieved a 12% reduction in our annual electricity consumption with cooling. And so that's why we wanted to open source it because that 12% should be for everybody to take benefit of.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I know historically we've thought about like 1 watt of data center compute equates to 1 watt of cooling, which obviously not sustainable at all. There's all this sort of emphasis in the larger discourse around investing your way out of power consumption in the data center through new infrastructure that keeps you just slightly above that sustainability tipping point, but you're just, workload scheduling, software optimizations, and just really understanding the entire thing as a continuum. Uh,
Right.
Maybe give us an idea more broadly of how you're thinking about Telus's organizational sustainability goals and the role that AI is going to have to play long term to really help you meet that.
Well, I mean, you know, sustainability is core to our values. And in fact, you know, we put our money where our mouth is. And, in terms of our bonds are all sustainably tied bonds. And so we have hard commitments that we have to meet to that. And so we kind of just, show how we really believe in this and we want to drive it. But to get those hard targets, you're not going to achieve it by traditional conventional means. So you're not going to do it by trying to reduce workloads. If you look at the economy and where things are going, workloads are only increasing. And if you even look at our subscriber base, people are using data more and more. And so you're facing a world where consumption is increasing, yet you want to drive down, your environmental footprint. And so this is where we're going to look at, algorithms and math and science to figure out what are the ways to optimize it. And so it's a very broad answer, but it's because it's such a big problem set. But what I just say is like, again, we've leaned into AI so much that we will look at every, dimension that we have and say, is there an intelligent way where it's either algorithmic or through AI and the different facets of AI being combination of, predictive versus generative of finding creative ways then to offset that kind of growth in consumption across the board.
Excellent. Now, I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I think there's a really fascinating nascent conversation going on globally around the role communication service providers have to play in providing sovereign AI. So AI compute that exists within a nation and lets, you really take control of where data is and who has access to it. How's Telus thinking about that? Seems like a big opportunity, and I know you all have already kind of started to move in that direction with your sovereign factories in Quebec and British Columbia, but lay it out for us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we are very excited about our sovereign AI factories. These we believe are going to be a game changer, both for Telus and for Canada. Um, I'll start back is, how do you go back from first principles? And I think a lot of people have to define what does sovereignty mean. And so the problem we were trying to solve is you look at there's many dimensions of sovereignty. And so the first thing we were trying to solve is scarcity of compute, because even regardless of where the compute sit, is just getting access to the GPUs to be able to perform it is a hard resource. And so you can't even control your destiny if you don't even have the compute infrastructure to even run those workloads. And that's a combination of trying to train your own models and build your IP, or even just inference, where like all the stuff we talked about is saying using these AI models for energy optimization. You still need then the GPUs to do the inference and compute. And so the first thing you want to do is secure the scarcity, our availability of GPUs. So that's one area of sovereignty. Do you control your destiny? Can you know where the compute? The second would be is, okay, do you need to control the control plane? Because you could always say, hey, I could partner with many of the hyperscalers around the world, and that may be sufficient for some people. But there are other workloads which says, okay, even if the data center sits physically in your country, but if you do not control the control plane, and that is owned by a foreign entity, then that still may be too much risk for you to take on. And that you want to have full control of that control plane and all the paths coming in. So that's another level that you think of sovereignty. Then you think the most highest level when it comes into privacy and security, that's when you want to look and say, okay, does all the data sit within my own borders? And it's not only that it sits, but does all the network paths in and out of that data center reside within my borders, or does it traverse paths outside of my country coming in? And there are certain workloads, if you think of just even in the public sector and you look at health data, maybe there's a very good reason why you never want that to go outside of your country borders, or even, government sensitive data. And so then it becomes securing the actual facility, securing the location of the data, securing the network paths coming in and out and the routes, and then securing the employees, whoever is servicing that data center. Are they all, local residents, local citizens with high security clearance? And so, there's many levels of sovereignty, and with our AI factory, we want to solve all of them. So depending on where you are on the continuum, Telus has that solution for you, right? That fills the need. And so we think it's going to be great. We think it's going to help a lot of people to be able to lean in and really drive the productivity gains that they want from AI, and taking away all the risks, like I said, that I listed above, scarcity, controlling your destiny, controlling the privacy and security, controlling the control plane. Like, it will take all those risks away.
Yeah, you pull out a very important point in terms of the value differentiation between an operator and a hyperscaler in terms of controlling that end-to-end data flow. So I guess just quickly, do you see this as a durable engine for new revenue growth, not just for Telus, but for operators globally as they kind of pursue this idea of sovereign AI?
Most definitely. I think, at its basic level, I mean, we're offering a service. So it's compute as a service, it's GPUs as a service. So you have just this direct revenue stream that comes from it. And then there's services on top of it. So if you think of Telus, like, we have the GPUs as a service, but then we also have our FuelX platform, especially when it comes to generative AI, which says, okay, but then how do you even control and manage workloads through various LLMs, and be able to sort of have the right governance, have the right guardrails, have the right, role-based access to the data that sits within the LLM or comes in and out of it. These are all like service offerings that are definitely revenue streams, and I think any global operator would benefit from that. But I think even if you look at macro, there's a broader picture which says, um, if you as an operator can offer that and enable and make the use of AI more accessible, then industries and companies and institutions will be able to leverage AI, and they will all get the benefits, and their productivity gains will increase. And there you see then the tide rises all boats. So I think there's even a flywheel that you create is that just even by offering that, there's the direct monetization from selling the service, but there's the indirect, which says, okay, does your overall economy and your overall customer base prosper better, which then drives even more, revenue, more expansion, more growth, more use for your services because you've helped, fuel that innovation and productivity gain.
And I think I've got time for one more here, and you've addressed this a little bit throughout, but the idea of driving adoption, of helping diffuse AI and AI enabled outcomes across your own organization and across other enterprises, it seems like making it accessible, making it private, making it safe, that gives you a foundation to let creativity and innovation flourish and then see the benefit from that. But just how should operators, how should enterprises be thinking about AI from a cultural organizational standpoint?
I think it's a great question. The simplest answer I'll give is just think of a human-centric approach to AI. So everybody goes straight to the technical controls they want to do and the privacy and safety, but you have to think of like what are some of the human fears you have. If you think of any team member, someone who's not versed in it, someone who's not a hardcore data scientist or software engineer, I think anyone else would find AI very intimidating. And maybe that's one of the reasons why ChatGPT had the uptake it did is because it was so accessible. It's felt so friendly and so familiar to use, and so there's a hint there of how to make it work. So if you think about your own employees, there's going to be a fear like, well, how do I use it? And could I do harm? And could I do harm to the company? Because you hear about, problems with data leakage or hallucinations. So how do you take that away? So how do you create a safe environment that solves for those? Then you take a certain level of fear. Then there's the other fear of, will I look foolish? If I do something and so then like how do you create the safe spaces where one, you create these private environments that it's just you and the AI, and so no one else has to see it. But then also do you create communities where people share their mistakes and share with them. So you end up having a very generative culture where you don't feel ashamed if you've done something dumb with AI. You're almost sharing your learnings. And so that's really great to create that community. So it's another level of psychological safety, that you create. And then I think the third one is this fear that, okay, is AI going to take my job? And so there you have to be very explicit that this is not about taking job. This is about empowerment. How this is there to give you back time. And this is there, the AI to say, okay, you go figure out on your own terms, what's the best way you can use AI to make your life easier and make your day-to-day work easier and give you back time for the value-added tasks you want to do. And if you kind of create that mentality and culture, then I think across those three dimensions, you create this really great environment and culture where people really want to lean in and they see like the safety and the benefits of using it. And I think that's been the formula that Telus has had and to really great success.
Yeah, you all have done some amazing work with AI, and I know that hearing your perspective today at the forum is really valuable for all of the carriers that have joined us. So, Hesham, thank you so much for joining and for telling us about the work you and your colleagues at TELUS are doing.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's been a real pleasure.